The story begins with a seemingly ordinary samurai walking down a dark street, and suddenly, he is stopped by a young girl named Karu. She thinks that he is Beitasai, a cruel killer, because no one walks with a sword anymore because in Japan it is forbidden. She vows to stop Beitasai, who kills people because he uses the fencing style created by her father to discredit his legacy. When she attacks him, he tries to dodge and falls to the ground, and Kara realizes that he may be not the killer that everyone is talking about. At this moment, the man introduces himself as Prince Wandering Samurai without a goal. She points to his sword and asks why he needs it, and he simply replies that it is a fake sword that will not kill anyone, and he wears it to scare away thieves. Their conversation is interrupted by loud police whistles, and Kalia runs to see what is happening and sees how a huge masked bandit kills the policeman. Kale enters into battle with the bandit, but he is wounded, and just at the moment when he is about to finish her off, Kin and Bada Skywax appear and the huge bandit runs away. But before that, he says that his name is Himi Rabetasai. Kale tries to catch up with him, but Kenshin stops her because she could get her, and her resistance is useless. She brings him to her family dojo, where she lives alone with an old servant named Kohide who quickly treats her wounds. She tells Kashin that her father created a special style of swordsmanship that is taught in this dojo. Nobeta says that the bandit is using this name to commit murder, because of which all her students ran away, and that's why she wants to stop him. Ken tells her that she has no chance of defeating this monster and advises her to give up this idea. She values her life. Kai seems to be suspicious of the lone samurai and advises Kao not to tell anyone about her secrets because people can take advantage of this. A few days later, when she was in the city for shopping, she suddenly saw Ken on the ground, and two policemen tried to arrest him for carrying a sword. She tries to persuade the officer, but is unsuccessful, and Kai bribes the police to let the man go. Ken thanks her and asks if she has any other clues about the killer, but she replies that she was informed about a dojo a few miles away where the killer may be hiding with his gang. Ken looks at Kyun Nosen, and she says that she found him wounded on the road and decided to take him in as a stray puppy. Since then, he has been living with her as her assistant and advisor. But lately he offers her to sell the dojo. Then Ka asks Kenshin to stay with her for the night, but he doesn't have time, and he says that he has business. That night he went up to the dojo where, according to Kao, the killer Zan knocked on the door, to which a drunken samurai man opened it and asks Ken what the hell does he want. And without hesitation, Ken says that he is here because of the killer. The man at the door is in shock, but immediately calls his friends who surround Ken from all sides. He defeats them all, but realizes that the giant swordsman is not here, and he has already left to attack Kao in his dojo. Kao drinks some tea prepared by Hibox Neck and the molester who slipped her drink, and she begins to lose consciousness. Without losing a second, Kai begins to push her to sell the dojo, and he claims that the documents are ready, so she just needs to sign it. She refuses to do it, but just at that moment the dojo door swings open and a giant one comes in. The samurai with several of his other subordinates and takes off his mask to show that he is Kai's little brother. Kao quickly realizes that Kai has been deceiving her since he came to her. He tried to tarnish the reputation of her dojo in hopes of expelling all the students and then forcefully buy the place. A large brute approaches Kao, awkwardly overpowers you while Kai slices her finger to get a drop of blood and leaves a fingerprint on the documents. Just at the moment when it seemed that all was lost, Kenshin stays in the dojo. Having destroyed all the bandits in their hideout, enraged by this, the beast orders his people to attack. But Kenshin defeats them with stunning horror from his speed when he says that Bassus does not use the style that Kyo's father created, but an ancient style that has existed for many years. The big guy does not understand what the last phrase means and challenges Kenshi to a fight with balls, but he easily defeats him with one blow. Then he turns to Kaiha. No, he has already wet himself from fear and lost consciousness. Kenshin breaks the contract after seeing his incredible skills. Kao realizes that he is a real Bassus, but doesn't want to talk about it, and he simply says goodbye to him. But before Kenshin can go out the door, Ka asks him to stay and help her return to the former greatness of the sword style. He dissuades her by reminding her how dangerous it will be for a real Bassus to linger here. But despite his attempts to dissuade her, she insists that she doesn't care. But what happened in the past? The Bassus is in despair to force him to stay. She asks him to become a wandering samurai, but when all her attempts fail, she asks him to at least tell her his real name before leaving. He says that his name is Kenshin Himura and admits that he is a little tired from traveling and agrees to stay here for now. Kao was happy, but her joy suddenly turned into suspicion when she remembered that the legendary Bassus fought in the war 10 years ago. so she asks Kenshi how old he is, thinking that he cannot be more than 30 years old with such a face. But he caught in questions and unable to answer. Weeks later, no student has returned to the Koa dojo even after his name was cleared of suspicion. She is upset about this, but Kenshin tells her that good things take time, and she asks him about his age again. She claims he doesn't look old enough to be a legendary samurai, but not so old that she can't date him. Later they go to a nearby dojo so Ko can train, and there a pickpocket tries to steal Encina's wallet. The thief takes the wallet and he swears at Ko, calling her an old witch while she argues with the thief. Kenshin says that there is no need to be so angry and gives him the wallet, asking him not to get caught again. Kenshin leaves, but the angry guy throws the wallet at him, saying that he is Yuhiko Mezen, a descendant of the Tokyo samurai, and that he did not stoop to accept handouts. He runs away, and Kenshin is impressed by his character. After all, he claims that the guy is already an adult. After this, and Kao go to the market where she wants to know why the strongest imperialist is content with the life of a traveling swordsman when he could have taken a high position in the government, but she doesn't ask anything anyway. She sends him shopping. She goes to a nearby dojo, but almost immediately learns from the excited people that the police have caught a man with a sword and understands that Kenshin is in danger. Kenshin is surrounded by police who want to arrest him, and he decides to surrender to avoid problems, but then a group of racist policemen with swords appears and disperses them all. Leader Yuji says that he will deal with the criminal himself and beats the policeman, who tells him that the criminal wants to surrender. Then the Dutch policeman points his sword at the Encinas, but Kenshin replies that he will not swing his sword unnecessarily. At that moment he appears, worried for the Ensanadas, sees this as a chance. He orders his men to take her hostage, threatening to cut her clothes if Kenshin won't pull out his sword. People shout against the brutality of the police with swords, but when Yuji orders his men to arrest them and kill those who resist, they run away like Kenshi cowards. Well, he's tired of it, and he pulls out his sword, telling Yuji that he won't allow him to harm the cow or anyone else here, and this is what the Dutch policeman wanted, and he declares that now he will kill the Encinas. But Kenshin easily deals with the policemen even when they attack him from all sides. When Yuji is left alone with Encino, the police captain arrives there with an important guest in whom he immediately recognizes the legendary samurai Ensenana Naana, but he dodges his attack with lightning speed and knocks him down. He becomes a local hero who spoke out against the tyrants, but then an important person calls him Beitayashi. Kenshin recognizes in this man Yamaga, an old friend who fought with him during the revolution against the chauvinist. Yamagata says that now he is a general. He wants Kenshin to join him as a high-ranking officer. Kenshin politely refuses, saying that he no longer wants to be a Yamagata killer. He says that no matter what they think about him, he has always been a noble man, and the revolution that overthrew the shogun tyrants became possible only thanks to him. He promises to deal with those who dared to disrespect him to the strongest samurai, but Kenshin doesn't want this and says that he is no longer the same who he was before. He leaves, declaring that he is starting a new life, but Yamagata reminds him that the age of the samurai has passed and now he can't do anything. Kenshin himself puts his hand on Kao's shoulder and answers that he can still protect those who are dear to him, leaving the general speechless. When they return home, Kata finally understands that Kenshin has become a wandering warrior in order to leave behind his life of violence and protect people with his sword. In the meantime, Yuhiko, a pickpocket who saw Kenshi in battle, was so impressed by his courage and character that he stood up to the bandits with whom he worked and told them that he would no longer do dirty work for them. For this he received from the leader of the bandits, who decided to teach him a lesson. Fortunately, Kyo was returning from training and saw how he was carried away by the bandits. They took Yuhiko to their lair and beat him in front of the leader, but he still refused to work for them. The boss tells the boy that he is not a samurai regardless from how many times he claims that he is and cannot survive only with his pride. Arigo responds by spitting on the floor, and this makes all the gangsters furious. They lynched him, telling him that his father was a useless rebel and his mother sold her body and died of venereal diseases. Yuhiko did not ignore this remark and bit the man in the balls who scolded his parents. He stated that both his parents were people of great character and honor, and none of those present here would understand them with their pea-sized brains. The enraged gangster is ready to burst into the house when suddenly the door swings open and Kyungsung enters. He simply orders the boss to let the guy go, and when the enraged guy interrupts him, he sends him to the roof with one quick blow. Kenshin turns to the boss and says that all his guards have been defeated, and if he does not cooperate, then join them. The old man is horrified by his and agrees to let him take the boy. Then Kenshin extends his hand. Yaekao, who pushes her away and says that he doesn't need anyone's help to fight his battles. Kenshin apologizes for underestimating him once again, but then picks him up and runs away saying that he needs to treat his injuries first as he is carried. Yuhiko cries and expresses his disappointment due to his weakness, saying that he wants to be strong enough to protect the honor of his parents. So when Kenshin reaches Tezukao, he introduces her to the boy and tells her to take him as a student. Neither he nor she likes it, and Yuhiko calls Kao Boomerang. She calls his iPad a child, but they both need a student and a teacher, so they accepted each other. Yuhiko continues to tease Kao even after they started training in the dojo and refuses to acknowledge her as his teacher. Instead, he asks Kenshi to teach him because he is the strongest in the area, and Kenshin is not going to pass on his deadly sword style. Kao plays hide and seek with Kyo and insults her by saying that she is a useless teacher, otherwise her students would come back. He is waiting what she will answer, but seeing that she is sad also does not know what to say. At this moment, two former students of Ko come to the dojo with serious injuries, and they are being chased by two armed bandits. Ko saves his students by knocking out the attackers and then finds out that they stood up for the people they were harassing drunk, and they returned with friends to attack them before they can explain what happened. Several more bandits burst into the dojo and you tell everyone to hide. However, the leader of the bandits says that they will show the true strength of their gang. Kao is worried because Kenshin has gone shopping and they are left alone. Yuhiko tells her that there is no need to cover up these people because they are lying. He smells alcohol and is sure that these are the same drunks who pestered people. When the two guys look away, Kao realizes with horror that Yuhiko is right, but then the wall of her dojo collapses with a roar, and that's not all that shocks her. The bandits outside use his wooden cannon, a more primitive version of the glass cannon, to destroy the wall, and their leader threatens to kill those who attacked his people. Yuhiko ridicules these to more than a mini ridicule. Damp-kan says that they are spineless cowards who escaped during the incident with the serial killer and now have returned here seeking refuge after committing crimes. At this moment, a transvestite enters to take revenge, and although Yuhiko is not against them taking away their criminals, Kao is against it. She comes up and takes responsibility for the behavior of her former students and asks the bandits to punish her but forgive her 3 students. The transvestite was already ready to seduce her, but Yuhiko kicks him in the face. He is indignant, saying that he does not need her protection and that she should not bear the whole burden alone. Now the transvestite is furious and orders his people to kill everyone, but then he returns Kain and asks what's going on. The bandits already know about his exploits, but the underscore orders them to blow him up with a wooden cannon. Kenshin doesn't even flinch when he cuts the cannonball in half with the sharp end of his sword. He orders the bandits to get out and they immediately run away, scared of his strength. Then Kenshin tells the 2 losers to never come back here again and don't mess with this dojo later. Kao is still sad about what happened and doesn't feel better when Kenshin tries to cheer her up, but Yuhiko tells her to stop thinking about the weakling because now she has a real man who will teach her. He declares that from now on he will consider her his mistress and asks to help him repair the dojo. Soon Hika begins to train seriously, but is distracted by the sound of an axe and seen as to work elsewhere. But then Kyo comes with good news. She shows Kenshin and Yuhiko a picture drawn by her grandfather, who is a fairly famous artist, and says that he wants to sell it to earn money for 10 years. Advance Kao wants to celebrate that there is money in their family and takes the boys to a restaurant. When they sit down at the table, he sees 3 drunk men were loudly discussing democracy. One of them throws a bottle at his friend but misses and hits the head, and Sina's Ka gets angry and asks the drunkards to apologize, but they are too drunk to hear him. The hostess tries to calm them down, but they hit her, and the man named Sanosuke Saogara hugs her tenderly. He calls these 3 drunkards hypocrites who discuss democracy and mock the weak, and says that he likes to put such people in their place. His words are effective, and 3 men call him out into the street to fight. Kenshin and his team also come out to look at this. Sana asks the drunkards to attack him first, and one of them hits him in the head with a hidden thorn, but his attack was as useless as Sakura's blow. He hoped to break the enemy's head, but instead of this he himself received a blow. Sana says that he can defeat people like him with 1 finger and proves it. He threw him with 1 click in the forehead. Another drunkard takes out a sword, but Kenshin scares him, saying that he will not allow it to come to a fight. The frightened man leaves and Sana asks Kenshin if his head is okay. He knows that Kenshin saw the attack, but he did not specifically dodge so as not to hurt Kao. Kenshin says that he overestimates him. Kenshin refuses, and the man leaves waving with a letter written on his shirt. Kenshin and his friends are discussing whether he is good or bad when the mistress approaches them and complains that he has not paid his bills. The truth is that Sana was a mercenary Hunkai, the servant who betrayed Kao, hired to kill Encinas. In fact, Bado, so he rejoices at the opportunity to fight with him. He spends time studying En's past, and then goes straight to him. Kenshin senses his battle, or even before Sana enters gate of the dojo, he goes to meet him and refuses to fight with him. But Sana declares that he is here to kill the legendary Batasai. He shows Kenshi's secret passage, saying that he worked for the imperialist army from 14 to 19 years old and was not only a commander of the swordsmen, but also an assassin, although only in the second case he became famous as the legendary swordsman. Then he declares that all the imperialists are hypocrites who only preach justice, lining their pockets, so he is going to defeat Kenshi against the strongest Temporiali, a fair fight. Meanwhile, the two conspirator brothers are waiting outside the dojo. Kohai is sure that Sana will lose to Kenshi well, but he hopes that he will weaken the swordsman and then he will be able to finish him off with a revolver. However, Kenshin already feels their evil aura and calls them outside. The brothers are trembling and sweating. Sana also tells them to come out, and when they are in front of him, he takes away the revolver from Kaiha and breaks it, declaring that he does not will let no loser interfere in their fight. Then Sada turns to Kenshi well and says that they need to move away so that he can fight normally. They go to the river where he takes out a huge sword, which is still several inches shorter than his sword. Sana claims that he can crush everything with his sword and rushes at Kenshi with a powerful blow. Kenshin easily dodges the attack and goes behind the back of the sleigh with one blow, knocking him down. But this was not enough to knock out Sana, who declares that his true strength is withstanding crushing blows without flinching, that the winner is not the one who gets stronger, but the one who does not give up. But Kenshin tells him to make this speech when he really wins. Sana announces the beginning of the second round and rushes at Kenshi with a huge sword. Kenshin dodges his blow and then jumps on the sword to confuse Sana, and he makes a low lunge and delivers a series of blows to Sana, believing that even he cannot withstand so many blows. Sana loses consciousness and realizes that Kenshin is not just on another level, he is from another galaxy. When Sana begins to lose consciousness, he remembers the events that changed his life 10 years ago. He traveled with the army of Seo, a detachment of imperialist revolutionaries who walked around Japan, attracting people to their side with promises of better policies. After coming to power, their leader Sogaro was the most noble and kind person who strived for true equality. Sana admired the captain and wanted his family name to be known in the world where even commoners will be allowed to take surnames. But one day, they learned that the imperialist faction had reneged on their promises and, to avoid the consequences, declared the army Seo fake and spreading lies. Sagara decided to return to the headquarters to think about the strategy, leaving Sana and another boy's age. Soon Sana brought terrible news about his captain and learned that he was executed by the imperialists to avoid consequences. That day Sana realized that the imperialists were a hypocrite who used and betrayed his father. He vowed to take revenge on them, and this thought gave him strength. When he rose again to fight Kenshi, Sana declares that he cannot lose and will defeat all the imperialists for the honor of the Skyo army. Having heard this name, Kenshin was confused and relaxed his guard, which allowed the Sao to strike him. He waited for this moment and shot at Encina. Sana that he had more than one gun, but although it seemed that Kenshin had received a bullet, he blocked it with the guard of her sword. Kali is relieved to see that her future husband is safe and falls to his knees. Kai decides to use it against the Ensenada for his brother to catch it, but Sana throws her sword at the giant, cutting his nose and telling him not to interfere in their fight. Then Kenshin looks at Hai, who takes out another pistol to shoot him, but Kenshin uses his deadly combination against him, controlling the force of the blow so as not to kill him. Kohai rides in pain, and Kenshin says that people like he deserves to have the word evil written on their backs, just like imperialists like him. Sana asks him to get back into the fight, and Kenshin points the sharp edge of his sword at him. Sana spins his giant sword to give it centrifugal force, and Kenshin takes a fighting stance. They both collide, and a sword cuts through San's weapon. He then jumps up and delivers a decisive blow to San's head, but he is still standing. Kenshin claims that he is the strongest opponent he has ever faced, but declares that the fight is over. However, Sao still stubbornly insists that he will not lose to the imperial pig. Kenshin tired of his whining, and he beats him, saying that the Eremitage army taught him in the wrong place about the revolution. San refuses to listen to the former Imperiali, but Kao and Yuhiko side with Kena saying that he is a good person and is no longer an imperialist. Then Kenshin comes up to him and says that although the revolution was a success and the government has changed, there are people who are still suffering from the misfortunes of the past and he wants to make them happy. He claims that this is his way to atone for all his crimes as a bad science and feels that he is the same as his righteous captain. He falls to his knees and admits defeat. The next day Kenshin is a little upset because of his past Tan-san's words, so Kao invites him to dinner again. When they arrive at the restaurant, that Sana is fighting with 3 drunks again. He tells Kenshi that his character will not change so easily and that he will never forgive the imperialists, but he admits that Kenshin is no longer the cold-blooded killer he used to be. He says that he will keep an eye on him so that he does not go astray again, and Kenshin thinks that he is quite strange. Soon Sana stands on Klebnikov in Kao's dojo and has the nerve to complain about the taste of Kao's free food, gets angry at him, and throws pots and fish at him. But Sana uses Kena as a human shield while they are fooling around. The police captain comes there and asks Kenshin for a favor. He tells Kenshi lately the killer has been attacking former imperialists who are now working in the government. First, he sends a message indicating the date and time when you will come for them, and then kills them at the appointed time, no matter how tight their security is. The police captain says that one of the survivors said that his body stopped moving right in front of the killer, and Kenshi has no idea what kind of martial art he owns. He accepts the request of the captain, who leads him to the man whom he must protect. This is a short, fat, ugly man whose only advantage is money and position in society. He is arrogant and thinks that his hired guards can handle anything. But when he sees Kenshi, who was once his commander in the army, he immediately becomes obedient to the Sao, who is also there, and he recognizes all the mercenaries because previously they were defeated by Kenshin and Sao. They are waiting for the killer to come, and while away the time playing Japanese chess, when Sao notices that Kenshin seems to know the attacker, they hear a scream and realize that the killer is already here. Everyone is preparing for the attack, but when the clock strikes once, someone from behind attacks the man and the killer enters the room through the window. The guards attack the killer, promising them money and a job in the government, but all they get is instant death for going against someone much stronger than them. Sanama stops everyone and orders them to leave, but then the killer uses his secret move and paralyzes everyone with one look. Sanama is still able to move and asks what kind of magic impresses him, and attacks, but it turns out that they are equal in strength. Kenshin was injured from the killer's attack but managed to cut his hat into pieces. The two simply exchanged blows. Kenshin realized who was in front of him. He heard about a sword master named Jin who was not loyal to either side in the war and would join the one that allowed him to kill more. Jin uses his petrification technique Han and Blue, but he is instantly freed thanks to his strong spirit and challenges Kenshin. He is sure that he will not lose, but Jin is the first to attack the fat man. Sana is also freed from paralysis thanks to his spirit and breaks Jin's sword before he can. Someone to kill Jin wounds San in the arm with a broken sword and takes advantage of this. Kenshin wounds him, breaking his spell over the others. Jin leaves, telling Kenshin that he will leave the fat man alone and that he will be his next target. He incites Kenshin to get a real sword to fight him next time before leaving. When Kenshin returns home, he explains to Sen that the paralysis spell was not magic or a trick but simply hypnosis of suppression, confidence, and the aura of the sword that could freeze those who are weaker than the caster. Sana thinks that Jin dug his own grave by challenging the strongest, but Kenshin is not so sure because although he has not killed anyone for the last 10 years, Jin trained a lot. Then Kenshin tells Sana that he is going to finish this battle alone and asks to look after Kei and Yeka. Sana returns to Dad due to Kao, who is worried about learning about everything that happened. She wants to find Kenshi not because she is afraid that he will lose, but because she feels that after winning this fight, he will go on a journey. Sana tries to stop her, saying that it is practically suicide, but she replies that it is better than being left alone. When Kenshin leaves her, she runs away in tears. Kenshin is waiting for Jin by the river, and she notices a strange aura, but freezes when she realizes that it comes from Kao. She says that Sana told her everything and she wants to stay with him. Kenshin replies that cannot fight, protecting her, and asks her to leave. Kao agrees, gives him her favorite ribbon as a good luck charm, and asks him to return it after victory so that he does not go on a journey. Kenshin promises not to leave her and she is happy. But then suddenly, Jin takes her away with an ominous smile. Kenshin can only react the way I did when I saw this, and his jaw drops. When he realizes what happened, he furiously chases Jin, who asks him to get more angry because his woman was kidnapped. He throws Kenshi well, a letter in which he asks him to return to his real self and fight with him for real. Kenshin reads the letter and tears up when he gets to the place indicated in it. Kao tries to tease Jin by saying that he is a coward who cannot fight Kenshi to us without a hostage, but he replies that everything is the other way around. He claims that now Kenshin is only a tenth of his former self and he wants to anger him in order to awaken his real abilities. He tells the girl how 10 years ago I saw Kinsena in the war. He was in the elite squad of samurai Shin Uni Kenshin. In the blink of an eye killed 3 of the strongest samurai from the elite squad and left him alive to sow fear in the hearts of the others. Jin says that then he would have lost. But now he has become much stronger. He claims that this will be an epic confrontation between the two camps. Akata believes that Kenshin is no longer a killer. At this moment the clock strikes 12 and Kenshin appears looking completely different. He challenges Jin, who says that he is glad to see the real bat side. They both charge at each other in rage and their strength is equal to Kenshin notes Jin deflecting his paralyzing spell and predicting he finds the right moment to intercept his attack and is about to strike, but Jin uses a hidden technique to catch the blade behind Kenshi's backhand strikes before throwing it away. Jin is disappointed that Kenshin is still not seriously upping the ante by using paralyzing spells on a girl. He instantly paralyzes her so that even her lungs stop working and she starts suffocating. Jin says to Kenshi well, his girl has 2 minutes left before she dies from suffocation, but he can still save by killing the KN and cast her in a rage and moves faster than Jin expected, breaking his nose. Jin likes to see this side of Kyun-sen, who says that now he will kill him. Jin attacks Kenshi on but retreats scared of his murderous intentions. Kenshin tells him that if he is afraid, he must free Kao, but Jin claims that it is no longer in his power. Kao can free herself by mustering all her will, or Kenshin can free her by killing Jin, but Jin says that neither is possible. He looks at his reflection in the sword and hypnotizes himself, literally realizing his desire to become stronger, saying that he is the strongest. After Jin finished his training with the help of a mirror, he demonstrates his strength by turning stone into rubble with one swing of the sword. He tells Kenshi well what is going to use this dishonest technique against him, but Encinas is going to kill Jin and now even Ga will not be able to save him. Kenshin takes a fighting stance and Jin is terrified because he knows that this stance is used for a lightning strike technique with a sword that kills the enemy with one quick swing before he can react. However, he still continues his self-talk and convinces himself that he can dodge. He rushes towards Ensign thinking that because of the dull sword his strike will be slower and he will be able to dodge his deadly attack and strike back. Kenshin attacks Jin as he gets closer, but Jin barely dodges and counterattacks. However, Kenshin also draws his sword from its sheath and breaks Jin's arm at the elbow. Jin falls to the ground and Kenshin tells him to prepare for death, pointing the sharp end of the sword at him, claiming that he has no other choice but to become a killer again to save Kao. Kao was worried about him and did not. She wanted Kenshin to kill someone again. She called him by name with all her might, and thanks to the power of love, the spell dissipated. Kenshin stopped when he heard her scream and rushed to her, and she was happy that she was able to stop him before he turned into a killer again. At that moment, a genie appeared behind Kenshi with a sword at the ready and said that he did not expect that a woman could free himself from his charm. Kenshin told him that the fight was over and that he had better wait for the police, but Jin replied that he was not going to give up. Kenshin raised his sword to attack him, but Jin suddenly stabbed the sword into his chest. He said shocked, Namu Kenshi well, what are the consequences of his actions? He said that he worked for the government and killed people who did not want to serve in the army. He said Kenshi well that no one can avoid the path of bloodshed if they set foot on it, but the one who kills has no right to choose the target, and he made a mistake by throwing calling Kenshi well that led to his downfall. Jin smiled at Kenshi well and said that murder remains murder until he dies and that he will be the same. He said that he will watch him from hell and see how long he can pretend to be a wandering samurai. Jin died, and Kenshin decided to leave everything to the police and returned home with Kao. She thanked him for saving her life and he thanked her for stopping him before he killed Jin. Kenshin returns the tape to her as well promised, but she is stained with blood and Yo, in a rage, rushes after him. After that, they return to the dojo and Kenshin continues to think about Jin's words. He wants to tell him to look after him and his backside. Even if he is really a killer, he swears to restrain himself all his life and be just a wandering swordsman who does not kill anyone. Their life returns to normal and one day, Kyo finds out from Yuhiko a Kenshin and self-propelled guns Let's Go place up practically forced Encina's Nim into gambling, so that he could use his observation skills and predict the results of dice rolls. Kenshin guesses correctly every time, while Sana has fun beating his friends. He finds out that one of his friends died of a drug overdose. He is in IM because of all this, but then a woman breaks into their house, escaping from her pursuers. She sees that Kenshin has a sword and immediately grabs it, realizing that he is in charge here. She asks him to save her from some evil people who came for her. At the same moment, Sana was already angry because of the drugs and hit two men in the face, telling them to get out. The men threatened him that they were from the private army of the most influential businessman in the area, and he should not mess with them. Sana doesn't care and he hits them in the face, but his friends are shocked to learn that these people work for a Kanri businessman known for his shady dealings and influence. Kenshin asks the girl if she is Kanri's friend, but she replies that she is not. Has nothing to do with him at this moment. Someone's trembling voice calls her Gumi and says that lying is not good. Everyone is shocked when they see that the voice belongs to a man who looks like a goblin who snuck into the room unnoticed. Gumi says that she is not Kanu's girlfriend and tries to escape from his grip, but the goblin laughs and says that it is impossible to men rush at him, and he shoots at them with his fingers like a pistol and wounds them. Then he is about to shoot at Megumi, but Kenshin turns over the rug to cover her and blocks the bullets with her sheath. The goblin is about to attack again, but Kenshin and Sana knock him out. Megumi is impressed by their strength, especially Kenshin, and asks to protect her from Kanri, promising to pay in cash or in kind. Sana furiously grabs her hand, demanding that she explain everything in detail because two of his friends were hurt because of her. She pulls her hand out and some bags fall out of her sleeve. One of the men recognizes her. They are drugs that are gaining popularity in the market. Meanwhile, Ka asks why Kenshin hasn't returned yet, and Yahiko says that he either won a lot or lost everything. He assumes that Kenshin will probably return and walk around in his underwear if he loses, and KL blushes imagining this. At that moment, she hears Kenshi's voice and runs out into the street to greet him, but freezes when he sees an unfamiliar woman with him. Kenshin is about to explain to Kao the situation, but Sonora shuts his mouth and says that they won Megumi in a gambling game. He asks Kenshi for the truth because he doesn't want Yeka and Kao to be involved in the drug case, and Kenshi has no choice but to agree. After 70 seconds, Sana says that he defeated Gumi. This makes him furious, and Kao says that she never thought that he would stoop so low. Then Ka asks Megumi to come back, promising to teach manners to these two, but she clings to Kenshi well and says that he is not going to leave anywhere. Yahiko praises Kenna, saying that now he has become another role model for him, and receives two blows from Ken. She tries to convince Megumi to leave, but she says that she can satisfy Kenshi more than she does, and she is kicked out of the dojo along with two men. Keenan and Sana say that it is Megumi's fault and ask her to explain how she is connected with drugs. But she says that this is personal information that she will not share with men whom she does not trust. At this moment, one comes running of Son's friends and tells him about a terrible accident. Two men who were previously chasing Gumi were found dead on the bank of the river. Gumi says that they were useless, so Kanri removed them. Shin looks around and sees a goblin tall lord from whom a strong aura emanates and a horse-faced man with glasses. Gumi says that the horse-faced man is a conner and the tall guy was recently hired for a long-time leader of his second group of guards. She says that this is a brilliant ninja leading the infamous brigade of ninja known as the 101 Banshu. Kenshin realizes that the enemies they are facing are dangerous, and they cannot leave Megu alone even if she cannot explain the reasons to them. Later at night, Kenshin collects information about the enemy army, and Megu tells him everything about the guard cameras will not be able to cope with the ninja Onuo. While they are talking, Kao is preparing dinner on the street, and she herself tells her that this is not a very good habit. Kao is embarrassed and says that if it goes like this and then they might steal her. But she pats her on the head and says that nothing like that will happen. He assures her that Kenshin gave the woman so much time because she needs help, and Kenshin is too kind to refuse her. At this moment, Kenshin comes out and gives Sana a list of enemy forces, saying that the ninja must have already learned about dojo and can attack at any moment. He promises to protect Kao, unlike last time, and she blushes, demanding an explanation. When it all ends, suddenly Yagika jumps out from under the floor and says that he hid there after dinner and hurt everything. He is indignant that he was not taken to Kenshi's team. Man says that he will also fight with them, while Yahiko and Sana quarrel. Megumi remembers that she also had friends and family like them. At that moment, the gates of the dojo are shaken by an explosion, and everyone runs out to see that Cardi's younger brother the giant has broken through the gate and demands that Kenshin return. Megu Sana decides to fight Cardi because he likes to fight with those who are bigger. Then him but Kenshin warns him to be careful with the trick. Sana rushes at the carny, dodges his first attack and then gives him a strong blow to the stomach, but the carny was waiting for this. He takes a breath as my yoga teacher exhales and makes a sound like a hiss releasing fire. Sana is under fire but barely dodges, and then Kenshin decides to intervene and deal with the Titan dwarf and his circus tricks. The carny shoots fire at him, but Kenshin cuts him to everyone's surprise while the carny continues to attack him with his fire breath. Kenshin continues to cut him, and Megumi tries to run away. Taking advantage of this confusion, Kao stops her, saying that she should watch Kenshi fight because he is only doing this to protect her. Gumi replies that he cannot defeat the fire-breathing giant, but Kao tells her to wait and look. The carny is running out of gas and Kenshin is still unharmed by the fire, and Megumi realizes that he is truly an unusual swordsman. The man drinks gasoline to replenish the supply in his stomach, and before Kenshin can stop him, she comes forward and declares that she can finish the fight because now he understands his trick. The carny releases fire breath at full power, confident that no one will be able to dodge it, but Sana rushes into the fire. He puts his fist in the carny's mouth and pulls the fuel tank out of his belly, saying that now he will not be able to defeat the carnies. Throws these words in response. Sana says that he will not be able to win with such a wounded hand, but Sana shows that his legs are fine and kicks him. However, the goblin was also hiding behind the bushes and could not accept another failure. He is going to attack Megumi, but Kenshin notices his bloodthirstiness and warns everyone it seems too late because the goblin shoots a bullet at her with a drill, but Yuhiko is the last. The moment obscures her with himself. Kato was worried and scolded him for his recklessness, but Yuhiko decided not to stay away from the Encina's mission. Saying this, he falls and the goblin laughs, saying that the bow will not last an hour because of the poisons of the bullet. Kenshin is furious and attacks him, but someone uses Naruto's technique and replaces the goblin with a wooden block. Kenshin turns around and sees a man in a demon mask with a weapon who appeared from out of nowhere and saved the goblin. He realizes that the man in the mask is strong and decides to fight him. However, the man in the mask, Hanya, declares that he is not going to tempt fate and will leave with his wounded friends for now. Kenshin doesn't mind, but wants the goblin to stay and create an antidote to the poison. Yuhiko Hanya says that he doesn't have to do this, and Kenshin decides to force him to obey. He attacks him, but Hanya blocks his sword with an iron fist and pushes away Ensenada Shinu. They will meet again soon. Kenshin immediately goes to Yuhiko, where the others are worried about how to save him. He suggests stopping the poison, and Kao is going to do it, but Megumi stops her, calling this idea stupid. She tells Kao that this is no place for amateurs and asks her not to do anything. She checks Yuhiko's symptoms and finds out what kind of poison was used. Then Megumi asks Kao call her regular doctor and name a few ingredients, and the doctor can cure Yuhiko with the procedure that she suggested. The doctor says that in a few days Yuhiko will be fine, and adds that whoever wrote the recipe for the antidote must have vast knowledge in the field of Japanese Western medicine. When he hears that a woman did it, his eyes widen and he asks what the name of this woman is. Kao and Sana are surprised and ask how he knows her. The doctor says that Gumi belongs to one of the most famous medical families in Japan. Her father was the pride of the family and he even studied abroad, but then the war started and he was called up for service. He died in the war and the rest of the family went missing, leaving the young Megumi came to Tokyo alone and became a doctor's assistant. But 3 years ago the doctor died and since then she disappeared. The old doctor wants to meet a genius like her, but Kao and Sana realize that they haven't seen Gumi for a long time. Megumi tried to run away while everyone was busy, but Kenshin stopped her and asked where she was going. She tried to evade the answer, but Kenshin asked her to tell the truth about herself. Megumi tells him about her life as a child and then goes on to tell him about the doctor for whom she worked. It turned out that he worked for Karu. He was a Waltham White for Karu and created drugs for him, but one day he created their masterpiece, which brought in so much money. Disagreements began between Karu and him. Karu killed the doctor and kidnapped Gumi because she was his assistant and knew how to make this damn drug. Gumi cries and says that she only wanted to live long enough to find her family working in medicine. When she found out that she was creating a deadly drug, she wanted to die. Kan and consoles her by saying that she suffered alone for long enough and now he will protect her. He asks her to stay here. Although Megumi deaths, she comes and says that she should stay here. He says that he knows what it's like to be alone, so he can't let her go, but they set the condition that Megumi will not pester Kenshi. Well, soon Megumi becomes a part of their life and prepares for them. Kenshin praises her strap, and when she starts to argue with her, Sana comes. Despite the fact that he heard about Megumi's tragic past, he has no sympathy for such a criminal and still blames her for the death of his friend. He refuses to eat what the drunken cook prepared, saying that he will choose cow's food over her. Rafi offended both girls with one statement, but Kenshin asks Megumi not to take Son's words to heart because now he is confused and cannot fully blame her for the drug dealing. Later that day, when Megumi is washing clothes, an old bookseller comes, and when she is with him he talks. He puts on a mask and introduces himself as a Hanya. He silences Megumi and says that he will pose in the well from which everyone drinks here, and she has no choice but to go with him. She meets Kara, who asks her to return to him, but she says that she would rather die. However, Kara threatens to burn her dodo KO and kill everyone who is there if she refuses to return with them. Gumi, in horror, Kanri tells her to accept her fate as a drug dealer because she cannot escape it, and she can only panic and cry when he leaves at night. Kin and his friends find a note that Megumi left, which says that she is returning to her hometown. However, Kenshin knows that now she has no one in her hometown, and Kari's people have captured her. He begs to return her and asks Sana to help, but he refuses to help the drug dealer. Kenshin tells him to pull himself together and be a man, asking if he has ever seen the sad eyes of Gumi, who so needed family and friends. He states that she needs to be saved and that is enough reason for him to risk his life for her. Kenshin leaves and Yeka also wants to join him. Kao stops him, saying that he will only be a burden, but Yuhiko states that he owes Gumi his life and will do everything in his power to repay for this. Kao can't stop him, and Sano realizes that even Yeka now looks more courageous than him. So he joins Kenshi, saying that he won't think twice and will go to make a fuss. Kenshin and his friends burst through the main gate from the guards and challenge the Karam soldiers. In time, Gumi gets to Karu, who greets her and tells her to immediately start cooking, but she states that she didn't come to cook for him, but to kill him. She takes out a dagger and wounds Kanri, retreats in horror, but when Gumi is about to stab him in the heart, the dagger disappears from her hand. The brilliant ninja Ashi takes it and feels safe from knocks Megumi unconscious. Then he asks Ashi to call his experts to try so that they howl from her the recipe, but Kara asks Ashi to listen to what is happening outside. Kenshin deals with the Kinru thugs and Sano also arranges Hasuhiko resists, that even after Sana saves him, he still acts like he's the second most important here after all the swordsmen are defeated. Arrows appear and Kenshin destroys the first group before they can shoot. Then the leader stays behind and orders his men to shoot Kyungnam again. Sana throws Yuhiko at him and knocks him down. When the man gets up, he sees that Yuhiko has distracted his gun, using the skills learned from his previous job. Yuhiko points the gun at the man who is out of fear, wet himself and lost consciousness. Other shooters surround Yuhiko, but Kenshin and Sana save him. Kari watches in disbelief as his guards fall unconscious and wonders why Kenshin is trying so hard for Megumi. However, Ashi knows that Kenshin is the legendary Batusai and people like him don't need complex reasons to follow their ideals. He wants to fight the legendary swordsman in a fair fight like the ninja leader Ana Banshu. Kenshin comes out at home and asks Megumi Kanyas, who is frightened by the cannula, but then starts laughing and offers to hire Encina's Google. Kenshin simply asks him to return Gumi and Ashi advises his boss to refuse to buy his services. Kenru gives up and asks Encina's to prepare for the future before returning Megumi. Kenshin sheathes his sword and leaves, giving Kanri the hope that he will have time to torture Megumi and find out the recipe from her. But Kenshin approaches a lamppost and breaks it, sending it out the window to the Connor, who in a rage demands the immediate return of the girl in horror and orders Ashi to deal with Kenshin. Claiming that his ninja have already taken positions, Karu pounces on him, demanding that he no longer send this useless goblin a Karya, otherwise he will not pay his salary. Ashi does not like this. He grabs him by the collar and tells him not to insult him. If he wants them to protect him, he takes Megumi with him and locks her in the observatory, where she wakes up and sees the ninja master in front of her. Ashi tells her that Kyun and his team came for her and she cries, calling them hopeless idiots and asking why they risked everything when she was ready to sacrifice herself. Ashi answers her but returns the dagger to her, saying that in an hour Kyun will begin to torture her and she can take the easy way out. He tells her not to put high hopes on Kenshi because he is going to defeat him, but thanks her for what she brought such a strong enemy to him, and asks her to use the dagger well. On the other side, Ken enters the mansion and sees that Hana is waiting for him there. He is surprised because he expected the masked ninja to be stronger, but Hanya says that it doesn't matter because they will still have to fight. Hanya rushes at Kenshi and successfully lands several blows. Hika screams at him like an annoying fan and asks him to predict his attacks and dodge them. Kenshin says that he is all out. Still tries to predict Hanya's movement, but his arms seem to lengthen as he strikes. Hanya tells Kenshi well that he is already under his spell and that he cannot defeat him without breaking them. Kenshin states that he will break the spell first and takes a strange stance holding the sword straight in front of him. Hanya knows that this technique is like an iron wall that provides excellent protection. He taunts Kin to make a breath in his stance, but Kin becomes like a statue and even Hanya doesn't answer. He got angry and rushed at Kenshi, who noticed his trick at the last moment and dodged the blow. Kenshin said that the horizontal stripes on Hanyu's arms made them an inch shorter and he used this to deceive him. He measured the length of his arm with a sword and when he did he was easily able to defeat Hanyu. Hanya gets up and praises him for his analysis, but his mask breaks and everyone understands that it would have been better if it hadn't broken. He looks exactly the same as my ex, without makeup, only he has no skin or lips or even cheekbones. Hanya says that he did it to become a spy who can easily change faces. He tells the story of his life, says that he was born in a poor country where it was customary to kill and steal. Arashi took him in and gave him the meaning of life. Hanya declares that he is ready to give his life for the boss and takes out his claws of the Wolverine clan to attack Kenshi. Kenshin dodges his attacks and blocks them before they rush at each other. In the last fight, Kenshin receives several minor wounds and a second later, Hanya loses consciousness and his claws break. Meanwhile, Megumi is in her room wondering if she should really leave when Kamari knocks on the door and apologizes to her. He says that she locked the door, wants Megumi to open it from the inside, so that they can escape and start a new life where they can atone for their sins. Megumi tells Kanri to shove his lies up his ass and he begins to swear at her, kicking the door. Then Kenshin goes into the next room, where he is met by a fighter who almost crushed him and his friends. The fighter of the waving doe introduces himself as Shiki, the main guard of the Onua Banshu gang, and again rushes at Kenshi. However, Sana catches him and tells Kenshi to find Megumi while he deals with this thug. Kenshin takes Hika and runs away with Shiki without even trying to stop him. Sana says that he wanted his boss to fight the strongest enemy so that he would be happy. Sana shouts at him saying that he himself is content with fighting with the enemy's subordinate. He taunts Shiki, telling him to fight like a man using only his fists. Shiki removes the chain from the sledgehammer and Sana rushes at him, that ties his hands to one end of the chain and the other end is already tied to his hand. Shiki declares that they will fight, so hits Sana in the stomach and throws him. He thinks that Sana has passed out and says that he is too weak to fight him. However, Sana gets up and tells him to shut up and be a man. He breaks the chain, telling him to fight without tricks, and Shiki does the same. Amazed by the courage of their enemy, they try to overpower each other and Shiki wins, pinning Sana to the wall and hitting his head. However, he is impressed by his strength and suggests that he throw Kenshi and join the Onua Banshu instead. Says that he was once a spy in the Imperialist army, but he was caught by Ashi, who did not kill him, but offered to serve him. Ashi promised to make him invincible using the secret recipe of his clan's muscle juice, and Shiki agreed. He constantly praises his boss, saying that if he had participated in the revolution, he would have become the strongest instead of Kenshi. Sana answers that all the Onua Banshu ninja are strong, but they are too intoxicated with their strength. He says that Kenshin is different, and he inspires everyone who is going around him, finds the strength in himself. Shiki hits him with his fist, but Sana blocks the blow, saying that he is stronger than Ashi because he does not use a sword in battle. This makes Shiki angry and he starts hitting Sana's head, turning it into mush, but Sana tells him not to be too arrogant, breaks his arms and knocks him out with one blow, and then throws him to the ground. Shiki loses consciousness and Sana tells him that if he has a chance, let him fight Kenshi to us, and then he will know what real strength is. He leaves, but loses consciousness due to a head injury. Meanwhile, Kenshin and Ashi finally meet face to face and Kenshin asks where Guashi says that he will only tell him if he defeats him, and Kenshin realizes that it will not be easy. Yaka says that Ashi's sword is too short and useless like his other sword, but he just advises him to stay away. Kenshin agrees with him and tells Yuhiko to come back, and then adds that Ashi's sword may be short, but it is best for defense and long battles. He claims that he cannot attack first, but Ashi always attacks first. Kenshin blocks his sword but gets kicked and flies to the side, and then Ashi delivers a series of blows to knock him down. Kenshin stunned Wani, and in ninja martial arts, As they continue to fight, Ken and gets more hits and quickly loses health. Ashi says that he hates the Imperialists and will kill Kenshi because he is the strongest of them. Kenshin asks if he is fighting to avenge his shogun. Adachi replies that SGU was a coward who abandoned his soldiers and signed peace treaty. He does not care about this man. Instead, he regrets that Anala Bingshu could not participate in the revolutionary, or he states that if they had fought Segunda City and killed the imperial officers in the resulting chaos, and the revolution would have failed. Ashi says that refusing to fight hurts his pride, and now he will prove his superiority by defeating the legendary Bassus. Kenshin replies that in a war both sides can be right or wrong, but he believes that Ashi would be wrong no matter which side he is fighting. He believes that his idea of burning the city to win the war is not superficial and says that he has no ideals other than cold rivalry. Kenshin vows to stop him as a revolutionary and a warrior. He moves with incredible speed and attacks Ashi, who blocks his fast attacks and then pushes him away. Kenshin falls to the floor and Yahiko screams at him to get up. Ashi tells him to show what he can do, and they fight again. This time Kenshin holds the sword by the blade, and this unbalances Ashi, allowing Kenshin to stab him in the neck. He realized that Ashi can control the distance at which the enemy is due to the difference in the length of their swords, but if Kenshin shortens his sword, he will not have the advantage. Roshi is impressed by his prudence and the fact that he holds the sword by the blade. Although this is not the sharpest point, he believes that this is ruthlessness, the true essence of the killer, and besides, to show him the true essence of the ninja, he lunges and attacks Kenshi with a slow blow. Kenshin blocks it, but then Ashi suddenly disappears and appears behind him. His movements are so fast and unpredictable that Kenshin sees only his illusions, and when he tries to attack him, he can only hurt him. Phantoms. At this moment, Ashi attacks him from above and Kenshin takes the blow before he can block it. He falls to the ground, and Ashi speaks that his dance with an illusory sword is an invincible move that has never let him down. Yahiko doesn't believe him, and Ashi tells him to go home because the fight is over. The boy refuses and takes out his wooden sword, saying that now he will fight instead of Kenshi. Ashi says that now it would be the same if he killed Kenshi, but then Kenshin suddenly says that he will not allow Yahiko to die and he himself will not die either. He gets up and his sheath breaks, and Ashi realizes that Kenshin used them to reduce the damage from the blow. He admits that Kenshin is strong and declares that he will kill him to get this title. He again uses the Dance of Swords to prove that victory will be his, but Kenshin instinctively blocks his attack before Ashi can understand what happened. Kenshin is behind him, but Ashi manages to disarm him. He strikes, but Kenshin catches him sword between his palms and says that he doesn't care about the title of the strongest, and if Ashi wants to get it, then let him take it at least 1,000 times. Kenshin says that now the most important thing for him is to protect his friends. He tightly squeezes the blade of the sword and hits Ashi on the neck with the handle. The ninja spits out blood and, in desperation, hits Kenshi. Trying not to lose, Yahiko runs up to Kenshi, who says that everything is fine with him and says that the fight is over because that Ashi lost consciousness from a blow to the neck. Then Kenshin thanks Yahiko for his support, but Ashi comes to his senses just 10 seconds after losing consciousness. He asks Kenshi to deal the final blow, but he refuses, saying that he will not kill anyone else. Then Kenshin says that after the revolution, Ashi must have received a lot of job offers from the government and asks why he didn't accept them. He replies that he had a bunch of different jobs, but they were only for him, and no one from his circus got any. He didn't want to leave his people and betray them. That's why he worked on the side and was a freelancer for 10 years. After the war, he helped most of his subordinates find a new life, and now he only has 4 left. He wanted to defeat Kenshi for their sake, to get the title of the strongest and give his people a reason to be proud. At that moment, Kuru enters the room and says that he came to deal with Kenshi to us from his American Gatling gun. Ahi and Yahiko and Kenshin are shocked when they see that Kanri calls his weapon absolute and shoots at them. The shots surprise Kumi, and will be Sanahana also comes up to him and says that he is not going to fight with him because he admitted his defeat. Now he is more worried about his master and wants to go check out. He will be Shiki. In the other room, Goblin and Cardi also decide to return to action after hearing the shots. Meanwhile, Kenshin and Ashi dodges the bullet. They ask Kanri why is he doing this. Ashi is wounded and falls to his knees, and Ken does. He takes a smoke break and says that he will now engage in the arms trade and this will be his product. He laughs, saying that he will become rich like Tony Stark by selling weapons, and Kenshin becomes furious, asking how many lives he will have to destroy to satisfy his greed. Kenyu just mocks him, saying that neither an assassin nor a ninja can compare to the power of money. He gives a 3-minute speech about why money is the greatest power in the world before taking aim again. But then Insana, Shiki and Hanya appear and Shiki rushes to cut the bullet to protect his wounded boss. Kenshin runs in the opposite direction and Korea doesn't know who to shoot. He decides to shoot Ashi first, but Shiki rushes under the bullets to protect him. He closes his wounds and everyone watches in horror as he falls to his knees. Shiki talks about Shai, that he is satisfied with the life he lived and the death he chose. He is glad that he used his invincible muscles to protect the boss, but loses his last strength and dies. Kei was about to shoot again, but then Artie runs up and says that if he shoots him, the hole in his stomach will ignite and burn him. Kenyu decides to shoot him in the head, but when Cardi falls, he leaves everything to the goblin who is hiding in a barrel behind him. The goblin climbs out of the barrel and shoots Kenyu with his bullet with a drill, but he knocks it off and kills the goblin with his last breath. Goblin Cardi apologized to Ashi, saying that they were the most useless of them, his subordinates to the very end, and it broke his heart. Hane asks Kenshi how long will it take him to get his sword and defeat Kanri, and he replies that 10 seconds will be enough for him. Ha says that he cannot promise that he will finish it in 10 seconds, but will try to distract Kanri to give Kenshi a chance. He asks Kenshi to save his teacher and then runs to Karu. Remembering the happy moments he spent with his teacher and friends, Karu shoots him, and Ashi are in despair. His sacrifice was not in vain because Kenshin took his sword. He is furious when Karu says that it was a cunning trick to send a monster as a human shield, but all these tricks are useless against a machine gun. Karu shoots at Kenshi but he realizes that he has run out of stalemates and is now trapped. Kenshin comes up to him and says that Karu must ask him for money in order to escape. He hits him against the wall and knocks out of him a promise not to kill. Despite the fact that he is furious after this, Kenshin tells his friends that they must find Gumi and leave Ashi alone so he can pay for his friends. As they leave, Sana looks at Ashi, who was strong enough to hurt Kenshi, and wonders if he has the strength to survive the loss of all his people. Kenshin and his friends soon find the room where Megumi is and knock down the door. They tell her that she is safe now, but she only apologizes to them, saying that because of her selfish actions she got them into trouble. She takes out a dagger and points it at herself, saying that commits suicide because she has no way to atone for her sins. She tries to stab herself, but it is not her blood flowing from the wound. Sana stops her at the last moment and counts her out for allowing Kenshin and not Hika to die. Megumi cries, saying that it is unfair that she was forgiven. At that moment they hear the policeman's whistle and decide to run before they are caught. Salmo tries to pull Gumi away, but she resists and instead approaches Kenshi. Well, she thanks him for everything and gives him medicine to stop the bleeding. She decides to surrender to the police. Although she knows that for the manufacture of drugs there is a death penalty, she approaches the police captain, and Kenru declares that it was she who made all the drugs. Gumi is already ready to agree with his words when suddenly Kin appears behind her and covers her mouth. He says that she is just a doctor who was kidnapped by Kanri and forced to make drugs. Kenshin forces his friends to testify in his favor, and while they do this, the police captain allows them to take Megumi into custody. Despite that Connor is constantly screaming that she needs to be arrested. After this, Megumi asks Kenshi who he is, and he replies that he is a murderer, manslayer boss who he has killed too many people, and even if he tries to atone for his sins by death it will not help anyone, so he lives to use his sword to help others and bring them happiness. Megumi is stunned, and then Kenshin asks her to become a doctor and save more people than she has harmed. After that, Kenshin asks Captain Polly about Ashi, but he is no one like him he didn't see. He says that they found only for headless corpses, and Kenshin understands that Ashi escaped through a secret passage. They find a way out of this passage and see Ashi holding the heads of his four subordinates in his hands. Everyone is horrified by what he saw, and Sana tells him that it is not his fault and that his subordinates die so that he can live on. But these words do not affect him, and Kenshin tells Ashi to fight him again and earn the title of the strongest by defeating him. He asks Ninja write this title on the graves of his people, and Ashi accepts the challenge and runs away. After that, Kenshin and his friends return home, where Kao is eagerly waiting for them. She notices that Kenshin is covered in wounds, but he says that she also has cuts all over her fingers because she tried very hard to prepare them delicious food. Kao does not allow Yuhiko and Sano to take a little nap and drags them to eat. Gumi and Kenshin happily join them, and despite the fact that the food looks appetizing, it's still terribly tasteless. Later, Gumi leaves thanking Kenshin and Kao for their help, and even offering her to become the NM of their permanent doctor before leaving. Gumi tells Kenji to come to her if he ever gets tired of the cow, but he's dumb as a plug and doesn't understand what she's offering. Sana tells Gumi not to tease the stupid cow and she asks him not to be so jealous. She tells Sana that he should become a real man like Kenshin and then maybe she will meet him, but he refuses this offer. Soon Yahiko resumes training, wondering if he will ever be able to become as strong as Kenshin and master the Kyo sword style. He continues to run away from the Gaki dojo without telling anyone about it, and Kenshin is sure that he is secretly training Kao and Sana do not agree with him, saying that he is either lazy or walking with some girl, while Kao and Sao sports which one of them is right. Yahiko comes and says that they are both wrong. Kenshin asks where he went when he ran away from training, and Yahiko replies that he trains regularly and it's no one's business. A few days later, when Yahiko runs away from the Kenshin dojo again and the others follow him to find out where he's going, they go to the restaurant where he usually goes, and Kao smugly says that she was right about Yahiko running off to eat and rest. They go into a restaurant, but the boy there is no. Then they find out from the waitress that Yahiko works part-time here. She says that one day he suddenly asked for a job and asked her not to tell anyone about it. Kao wonders why he does this, and Sana thinks that it is because of the pretty assistant named Subo, but the waitress says that this is not so, because Subo started working here after Yahiko got a job here. A clumsy girl stumbles while carrying bags of rice, and Yahiko picks them up and scolds her for what she cries and says that the extra weight will help him train his lower body. While Kenshin and his friends are having lunch, are wondering why this guy works here. At this moment, Sabai comes to take orders from the customers, but is scared when he sees this group of them. The leader says that he cannot greet the owner and asks Sabai to follow him. Meanwhile, Yakika takes a break and sees Sabai being led away by a girl who was a spy for a gang of thieves, and their leader Mikio asked her to give him the forms for the keys to the restaurant. She asks Hindo steal because he was once a vassal of the shogun. Mikio gets angry and hits her, saying that she can't order him around because she's just a servant in his family. He says that he won't force her to work for him, but he needs money, and he will kill everyone in the restaurant to take it. The girl is scared and is going to give the forms, but Mihika stops her, asking if she's a fool if she believes this guide. He rushes forward, saying that he won't let Mikio do that. What is he up to? And Kenshin also approaches them. Mikio's people attack Yahiko, but he defeats them with his sword. He is sure that he can defeat them, but Mikio throws a stick at his feet so that he falls. People surround Yahiko and start beating him, but Kenshin just watches. Kao scolds him, asking why he doesn't help Yahiko when he is in trouble, but Kenshin does not allow her to interfere in Yahiko's fight. He says that the bow will never become stronger if he is always there protected others, and urges Kyo to let him go through this until the end. Yaka is beaten and the girls can't bear to watch it, so she gives Mikio the forms for the keys and he orders his people to leave. Subin cries and apologizes for dragging him into this, but Yahiko says that she's not dragging him into anything. He himself decided to intervene. He tells her not to worry because he won't let the bandits destroy the store. He leaves, deciding not to accept the help of Kyung-shin and the others because it's his battle. The next day, Ankaska creates a training device to simulate fighting with several opponents at the same time, but Keo says that this will not help Yahiko. Zanoe and runs to Kenshin, asking to teach him the technique of fighting with several opponents. At the same time, Kenshin tells him the old trick of pretending to run away from enemies and then defeating them one by one while they try to catch up with him. Ihike is glad to hear this, but Kenshin says that this requires enormous leg strength and stamina. Cavill also comes and speaks that when he fights on balls for someone else, he should under no circumstances lose. The next night, Mikio and his men are about to attack the restaurant, but suddenly Yahiko appears and runs away with the spare keys. They chase him and corner him in a narrow alley. They think that he is easy to defeat, but Yahiko specially lured them here to arrange a one-on-one fight. Two attackers cannot cross the street at the same time, and Yahiko easily defeats them when they come one by one, then already do not pose any problem for him. Mickey understands his plan and orders his people exhausted, but then suddenly Kenshin and Sana come to the scene and scare the henchmen with one look. They hide so that Yahiko is not noticed then, and now the guy can calmly fight with the leader of the thieves. Mikio takes out a real sword and attacks Yahiko, who sees his attacks and reacts correctly. He pushes the guy away and keeps him at a distance. Meanwhile, Subo also sneaks away, hoping to save Yahiko from Mikio. No, Keo finds her and says that she will not be able to stop this man. She asks her to believe in Yahiko and trust herself more so as not to do anything bad for Mikio, even if her family has served his family for many generations. Mikio gets angry and aims at Yuhiko's legs, but he only manages to lift one leg. However, when Suba encourages him, he realizes that he cannot lose. Otherwise she will get hurt, and steps on the sword Mikio to stop him, and then knocks him out. After that, Yanka calls Kao and the others and asks why they were following him. The answer is obvious, and when everyone gathers with Bane, she blushes thanks to Yuhiko for saving her and promises that from now on she will be strong. Kao accompanies her home, and then Sana says that it's time for Yuhiko to explain why he works part-time. Yuhiko says that he wants to buy a sword like Kin not to win fights without hurting anyone. When will it become strong enough? He just saves money for it, and Sano laughs at his childhood dream. Yuhiko gets angry at Sano and says that's why he didn't tell him. But Kenshin calmly replies that such a sword is expensive. Soon Kao is going to go to training at a neighboring dojo and asks Kenshin to go with her because the master wants to meet him. Kenshin says that he won't go, but when he is threatened that he will have to go grocery shopping himself, he agrees. They go to the Mac dojo where all the students stop training as soon as they see that Ka enters the hall. Their teacher tells them to stop acting like weaklings and get back to training, and he himself comes out to greet Kenshin and Kao. The atmosphere becomes tense when the students say that Master Makava wanted to fight Kenshi for us one day, but Kenshin does not want to fight with him and decides to rest in the corner. Hallett has never heard about Poppy's true intentions and apologizes for not telling her about it previously. He assures her that he no longer wants to fight with Kinnon because he immediately sees how strong he is. Soon Kao begins to train with his students, and Makava sits next to Kenshi to us and says that most of the students came only for Kao. He is sorry that the daughter of his dead friend gathered a crowd in his dojo, and he says that due to the modernization of the art of fencing, it is in decline. He says that every day strong warriors came to the dojo to challenge Macau. But suddenly the doors opened and a huge man entered the hall. The students tried to ban he should enter the dojo wearing shoes, but he just threw them aside like ants and went up to Mac to challenge him to a duel. The man took off his hat and introduced himself as Rai, a man who is worried about the future of sword art. Makao realized that this man was really a strong opponent and agreed to fight him in 3 rounds. At that moment the student Rai Ryuta ran up with swords and asked his teacher what kind of sword he would fight with. Raizu said that the master wants to use bamboo swords, and Yudo, after calling him a weakling, Yuhiko hit him, telling him to shut up, and they started arguing. Rairu told him to shut up and then took a bamboo sword from the dojo, saying he was using only real swords. The fight started. Yo was the judge. Macau showed his fighting spirit, but Rairu was much faster and broke his shoulder before delivering the final blow to the head. Everyone was worried about Macau, and Ko wanted to call a doctor, but Macau stood up, saying that the fight was not over yet. He attacked Rai, but he knocked him out. Rai grabbed him and wanted to cut his throat with a broken bamboo sword. Although Ko said that the fight was over, Kenshin stopped him before he killed the old man, but Raid said that the one who lost in the duel with balls has no right to live. He says that the old man was a fool and a coward for fighting with a bamboo sword. Then Raizu challenges Kenshi to fight with real swords, because hurt his strength, but Kenshin refuses to use the sword to show his strength. Rairu changes tactics and orders Yuta to burn the sign of this dojo because the master has already lost. None of the students dare to challenge him, and Kao accepts the challenge to save the honor of the dojo. Now Kenshi has no choice and he accepts the challenge of Raizu to save Kao, but still refuses to use real swords. Raid says that he agrees to fight with a wooden sword, and the one who strikes first will win. Kyo says Kenshi well, be careful with his opponent, but Kenshin replies that everything is fine. The fight begins and Raid attacks first, forcing Kenshi to only dodge his blows, but he does this on purpose so that the fight ends in a draw and Raid returns with nothing. He understands his plan and uses a secret attack that is so fast that his sword disappears for a moment. Kenshin chooses the right moment to dodge the blow and his sword splits in two and the floor is cut by Raid's blow. But he is happy with it and leaves the dojo after learning the name of Kinnon Kinsena, and he replies that Kenshin did not even show half of his strength. They argue again, promising to fight for real someday after this. Kenshin and the others examine the cut on the floor and realize that it was made by something sharper than a real blade. Kenshin wonders who Raid is. The next day he tells Sana about this incident, trying to find out who Raid is at this time. A carriage drives up to the gate and the butler gives Kenshi an invitation from Rai, in which he asks him for a meeting. They get into the carriage and arrive at the house of a billionaire who turns out to be Yuda's father. He leaves his son to look after the guests, and he takes Kenshi to Raid's fencing of this era and declares that he is going to eradicate all the weak fencing styles in Japan and then using his style to make swordsmen famous again. He asks Kenshi to join him because he is a true master, but Kenshin understands that Ride also owns an ancient style of fencing and says that all ancient styles are aimed only at killing. He is not going to be friends with a person who promotes violence unnecessarily. He says that even if the death of fencing is sad, he would prefer this than turning the world into a cruel place. Ryu takes out his sword and says to Kenshi, well, if he is not a friend, then from now on he is his enemy. He attacks Kenshi with his signature move called Idzuna and destroys the bridge. Kenshin dodges his attacks and ends up in the corner. When Reizu cuts a tree with one quick swing, he says that he learned this secret move just by reading old texts, and now he is invincible even to Ryu cuts the stone in half, but Kenshin counterattacks. He pulls out his sword and his blade breaks. He takes out his staple and says that he will no longer use swords that kill people. Ryu decides to retreat for now, but still considers Kenshin his enemy. Ka and the others breathe a sigh of relief and are about to return to the dojo, but they almost forgot about Yuta. He is angry with them, but Yuhiko says that if he has enough courage, then he should stop going after this. They are healthy and come to their dojo to challenge him, but with a bamboo sword. Yuta comes at dawn to challenge Yuhiko and says that he did not specify the time. They take their positions, but then everyone notices that Yuta does not even know how to hold a sword because no one taught him this. He is embarrassed, but when Kenshin asks why Ryu does not teach him, he replies that the master is busy destroying other styles for the sake of future fencing and does not want to bother him. Kao takes pity on the boy and decides to teach him basics because he is already here, and Ihika is jealous later. Kenshin prepares rice balls for everyone and talks to Yuta, who says that he wants to become stronger to disgrace his father. He says that his father abandoned the way of the samurai and sold swords to foreigners, and he wants to become a real samurai to prove that his father is a coward. Kenshin understands that Yuta is as proud as Yuhiko, but his pride is leading him in a different direction. Kao also heard everything and tells Yuta or whatever his goals are. She sees that he really wants to learn fencing. She invites him to learn from her, and despite Yuhiko's objection, Yuta agrees. Then he goes to the Raj to ask for permission to take another teacher, and he allows it, but asks him to gather information about C. Yuta is shocked to learn that he only helps with housework. However, over time, his rivalry with Yuhiko intensifies, and soon he shows that he has more potential in fencing than everyone thought. Stephen Kao invites everyone to the restaurant, but Yuhiko works this shift and there, too, he quarrels with Yuta. When they calm down, Kao invites Yuta to become one of her regular students, but he politely refuses, saying that although training with her is fun, he wants to become stronger only under the guidance of Rai. He leads them to where he met Ride. One day, their carriage was attacked and his father bowed to the bandits, offering to pay as much as they want to let them live. But Yuta refused to follow his cowardly example. The bandits were about to beat him up when Ride suddenly appeared and drove them away with one blow. Yuta was amazed by his strength and decided to become his student at that very moment. He still believes in his strength and asks Kenshin to fight his teacher in a fair fight. When the time comes, however, he is surprised to notice that his teacher resorts to cunning and attacks Kenshi without warning. Everyone dodges his attack and Yuta thinks that Ride is just fooling around, but he is serious and wants to defeat Kenshi at any cost. Strikes him with a series of blows, but none of them reach the target, and even when he tries to blind Kenshi on the dust, it is useless. Kenshin uses his finishing move and hits Ryu on the head, and although he takes damage, he does not give up. He decides to use his strongest attack called the Wind Side and delivers powerful blows to Kenshi, who is forced to defend himself so as not to hit those who are standing behind him. But the attack still reaches the target and wounds Yuta, but does not harm Ryu. Attention to him, saying that this weakling wasn't even his student. He only kept him around because his father was rich and financed his project to revive the art of fencing, and he didn't care that he lost him. Yuta is in despair, but says to Paradise that now his main goal is to defeat Kenshin. He is preparing for battle again, but Kenshin coldly looks at him and tells him to wake up because he will deal with him. After he takes Yuta to the hospital, they take him to Megumi and the old man, who say that although the boy's life is not in danger, his arm is so damaged that he will no longer be able to hold the sword. Tika becomes furious when he learns that he has lost his only rival, and he asks the doctor to cure him, but McGinn apologizes, saying that this is impossible. At that moment, They hear something falling in the room and runs in to see that Yuta has fallen from the bed because he realized that his right arm is not moving at all. He is upset about Raide's betrayal. But then the doctor says that Kenshin has left to fight him. Yuhiko invites Yuta to go with him to watch Kenshin win because it will help him get back on his feet. They like to watch the fight despite the doctor's warning, and Kyo goes with them. Meanwhile, Sana almost challenges Raide to a fight, but then K&N Raide appears and declares at this time he will defeat him and attacks him with his wine side. But Kenshin already understood his trick. He dodges his attacks, saying that due to the high speed of the sword, he creates a vacuum blade by pushing out air and directing it at the enemy. But after that, the technique becomes useless. Disappointed by the fact that he cannot hit him, the Ryu launches a flurry of wine sides and Kenshin dodges each of them. But then the last one hits him. The Ryu rejoices, declaring that his style and technique of wielding a sword are invincible. But Kenshin says that he is only a third-rate swordsman. If he is happy after inflicting such a small wound on his enemy, he understands that despite the talk about violence and battles, the Ryu of all only a weakling who has never killed a person. He is furious that he was figured out so well and again attacks Kenna, who can only dodge because there is no way to block the windy scythe. Ryu pushes him away using both close and long-range attacks and wounds Kenshi in the leg. He thinks that now victory definitely is because Kenshin is wounded and says that he can't even resist because of the difference in range. Ryu's attack attacks Kenshi again, but he doesn't even dodge and instead counterattacks using his long-range attack. He with great speed snatches the sword and hits Ryu on the head with the hilt and then deals another blow by sheathing the sword right in the air. Jumps up and hits Ryu on the head with the sheath, knocks him out. Yuhiko and the rest runs up to them to see how the fight will end, and he rushes to Kenshi. Ryu comes to his senses and grabs Yuhiko, threatening to kill him, but Yuhiko says that if he dares, then let him kill. Kenshin tells Ryu that although his fighting style allows him to chop people, he cannot kill them because he does not have the strength to do so. He says that Ryu should give up the sword until he meets someone who will not hesitate and kill him. Ryu loses his mind and lets go of Yuhiko. Realizing that he is completely destroyed, Ken and the others return home, and Yuta says goodbye to Ryu. Soon after this, Yuta becomes depressed and refuses to meet with anyone. His father regrets that he trusted Rowan, says that he is going to move to Germany because the medicine there is the most advanced in the world, and Yuta maybe he will get better there. Ken and his friends come to them to say goodbye, and while the adults don't know what to say to the boy, Yuhiko suddenly rushes at him and attacks Yuta, blocks his blow, and then Yuhiko asks if he is going to be so gloomy all his life. He says that Yuta should become stronger than Ryu to get rid of depression or forever remain a loser. His words reach Yuta and he attacks him, saying that he never will a loser who will give up fencing and that he will do it even with one hand if he has to. While they are fighting, the adults realize that they don't have to worry about the boys anymore. Soon it's time for Yuchi to leave, and Yuhiko and Kao tell him to quickly return to the dojo. When Sao and Yuhiko return, Kao looks at Kenshin and says that Riju and Mao were worried about the future of fencing in their own way, but looking at such promising guys, Yuhiko and Yuta, he realizes that not all is lost. One day, Kenshin has a dream about his last battle with the captain of the Shinsengumi. But then it will be Yuhiko and Kao who have finished training in Dojo Makava. They slap him on the cheeks to wake him up and drag him out into the street. And later Kenshin tells them about his dream and that the elite squad of Shinsengumi samurai was his main rival in the struggle for power. He claims that the Shinsengumi officers and the three captains were especially outstanding, but after the age of the samurai ended, they disappeared without a trace. Kenshin says that many of them were strong enough to stop him, and he feels closer to them than to the officers. Imperialist Kao notices that Kenshin talks so much about his past for the first time and understands that something is wrong with him because he has not remembered his past for many years. Meanwhile, Sana was waiting for the Encinas at the dojo to have a snack when a merchant came in with medicine and offered free samples. However, Sana noticed his calloused hands and decided to check him out, and the man admitted that he had come to kill Sai's father. He takes out the sword and Sana decides to fight him with his bare hands. He beats the man with all his might, but he says that in peacetime his blows are not so strong. But if he lived during the war, he would be considered a weakling. Then he says that now it is his turn and attacks Sana. Meanwhile, Kenshin and his friends, they meet Megumi on the road, who wants to spend the weekend with him. She notices that Kenshin looks bad, but he insists that everything is fine. They soon arrive and sees a hole in the wall. Kenshin gets worried and runs inside, where he sees that Sana is seriously wounded and a blade is sticking out of his shoulder. Gumi starts working and saves Sana's life after a long grueling operation, and Kenshin is watching the dojo all this time, judging by the red box left by the Iranian attacker who got Sana. He is sure that attacker Sohazi am I the captain of the 3rd Division. Sensei Kenshin believes that the skills within he have almost weakened, and given his Sabato promise to never kill anyone again, he may not be able to cope with him. Meanwhile, Shuo meets with the Senate secretary who asked him to kill Kenshi on another assassin, Akamsu, judging by the number of scars on his body. An excellent informer is also there, and he is not at all happy to see Shuo. One day he comes to Satan for dinner and complains that he stole from him the task to kill Kyun-san. Shuo replies that he will gladly return this task to him, and asks Akamsu to take over the murder of Kenshi, but leave the money to him, and Akamsu is happy with this arrangement, and Shuo sends a letter to lure Kenshi out. Student Kenshin receives a letter and goes to meet him, saying a Hikar dojo because he is not leaving for long. Kenshin comes to the indicated place hoping to fight with Sagita, but instead he is attacked by Akam. Kenshin dodges his chain and then quickly disarms him, saying that Saida forced him. Kenshin doesn't believe him, but lets him go and leaves. Akatsu shows his face and attacks him again. He ties Kenna with his hidden chains and hits him several times. On the other side of the stat is going to attack Kao and the dojo. He comes to the dojo and introduces himself to the police, telling Kao that the police captain sent him to tell Kenshi about the people who want to kill him. Kao is worried and trusts Sao, allowing him to wait in the dojo until Kenshin returns. She tells about this to Gum, who believes that the people who hunt Kenna must have convinced Sonata, but she assures Kao that Kenshin will not lose to anyone and he will be fine even if he is alone. But Kenshi is not good. He lost consciousness after being beaten again. And Kamasu brags that he is a better killer than Jin and the Fox, and says that the politician who hired them should have realized from the very beginning how valuable he is. Kenshin just pretended to lose consciousness and hurt everything. Akamatsu retreats, realizing that he may have problems. He again tries to hit Kenshi on the stone, but he pushes back to soften the blow, and then, holding the sword in his mouth, rushes at Akamatsu and defeats him. When Kenshin returns to the dojo, Kao comes out to meet him, and worrying about his condition, she reports that the policeman came and warned them about the attackers, but as soon as Kenshin enters the dojo, he recognizes the sight in the profile of SA, greets him, saying that over the past decades he has become much weaker, and Kenshin replies that he too seems to have rotted from the inside, because no matter how cunning he was in the past, he never resorted to such vile methods as sending subordinates into battle and taking people hostage. Kenshin refuses to recognize Sato as a samurai and begins to laugh, saying that Kenshin is even more pathetic and he can't cope with such an opponent as Akamatsu. Kenshin does not pay attention to his words because he no longer needs the power of a killer, and he declares that he is happy with the fact that he is a samurai who can protect those who are dear to him. Asitata replies that he has no strength. Even to this, he tells Kenshin that he could kill his friends at any moment, and that even weaker opponents, such as Jing and the raids, have hurt those who are dear to him. Asitata takes a fighting stance and says that the Badusai killer can protect people without killing others. He claims that killing those whom they consider evil was the only thing that united the Shinsengumi and the Imperial Swordsman, and he cannot bear to see how his old enemy fell low upon hearing that Kenshin still does not want to kill anyone. Sinyo changes position and tells him to attack him so that he can destroy everything that is dear to him. Kenshin approaches him, and Cologne must fight in this battle. This is not what she is worried about, because she feels that after this battle Kenshin will disappear somewhere and attacks him first, and Kenshin jumps away to dodge his quick attack. However, SA manages to wound him while he is trying to counterattack. Then he delivers another blow to wound Encinas and push him away. SA again takes a fighting stance and attacks Encinas with a signature blow that he has perfected for years. Kenshin blocks his attack but still loses. Kyo rushes to his aid, but she realizes that Kenshin has changed again. She tries to protect him from Set, but Kenshin pushes her aside because he wants to end the fight. Sujita also understands that Kenshin has won because he awakened his powers, and the longer he fights the more he becomes like his old self. Kenshin attacks Shuei and moves so fast that it seems as if he has disappeared. Kenshin is about to attack from below, but Shuei notices him in time and pushes him away. He is amazed at the incredible speed of his attack and the fact that he is breathing heavily after it, but seeing his eyes he understands what is happening because he is fighting with his greatest rival. Kenshin suddenly returned to bat mode Sajat, and there is only one way to check if it is true. Shogawa strikes Kenshi well with full force, but he dodges the blows and the next attack with incredible speed, and then strikes the back of Sao's head, from which he crashes into the wall. Kenshin taunts Sao, saying that he seems to have lost his grit, and Sao declares that he will fight to kill him. Kenshin says that these are his words, and when the two men come together in battle, Kyo's heart skips a beat. Kenshin becomes stronger every second and begins to suppress Shua. He breaks his sword in half. Fan says that he is next. Shua's neck will be cut. Kao realizes that Kenshin is no longer like himself and has turned into a Batai killer and begs someone to stop him. She cries and says that she will lose Kenshi if the fight continues. But then Sono appears, supported by Gumi, and tells Kao that they cannot stop these two because the one who knows the horrors of war can do something even with a broken sword. Surrender rushes into battle with Kenshi. Putting his pride above life, Kenshin throws his sword and hits him with his bare hands, but Sta also refuses the broken sword and decides to deal with it with his fists. SD blows throw Kenshi off balance, and the sight strangles him with his cloak, but Kenshin hits the scabbard so hard that they rise from the other side and hit him in the throat. Both of them are almost exhausted, so they decide to end the fight with the next move. Kao Tears runs to Kenshi to stop him, but before she manages to run, he rushes forward to defeat his sworn enemy before they have time to collide. A stern voice orders them to stop, and Kenshin and Su shudder. They turn around and see the general, who tells Su that his task is not to kill Kenshi, but only to evaluate his abilities. Su replies that he will not allow even the general to interfere in their battle. But another man comes out of the carriage, shocking both samurai with his appearance. The man tells the Shodi that he does not want his life or Kenshi's life to end. Kiran and Kenshin realizes that he is behind all this. He calls the bearded man a former revolutionary and the current minister of the interior. Akuba Tashimi Negi asks why everyone is so surprised because Akuba is an influential man, and she herself tells him that Akuba single-handedly controls the Japanese government and that he is the most powerful man. The SGA takes his and says that now they cannot fight, so he leaves, and Kenshin replies that it is a happy day when Akuba saved his life. When he leaves, the general shouts at SGU and he reports to him about his mission, claiming that Kenshin was useless. Apadu says that he is still strong. After this, Yubei asks Kenshi to talk to him alone, but he refuses until he informs his friends about the matter. Then he realizes that he is still in Saimo and beats himself to calm down. Kai is glad that he is back and rushes to hug him, but he does it too harshly and hurts Kenshi's wounds while his friends are caring for him. Akuba and the general decide to agree to his terms because they need his help. He tells Kenshin and his friends that he will get straight to the point and reports that a man named Shisha has started acting again. Sano asks the minister to tell the others, and Kenshin explains that Makoto Shishio can become his successor. He took his place after Kenshin became a soldier, but he never left the shadow world and few people know about him. Kenshin asks Akuba if Shishio could survive because he died in the war, and then he finds out that Shishio did not die, but was killed by the Imperiali. But Kuba says that Shishio had great talent, but he had a complex character that could cause problems in the future. So they killed him and even burned his body. But despite this, he turned out to be a tough nut to crack and survived. Now he has gathered under his command many famous warriors and threatens to overthrow the government. Akuba asks Kenshi to kill Shisha for the good of Japan, but his friends do not want him to become a killer again. Akuba says Kenshi, well, what has he got? Has a week to make a decision and leaves, and Kams, in turn, tells his boss that the Minister of Affairs personally came to stop the fight between the Cash and the Sao, and they need to escape until they are exposed. But then the Sao appears and immediately kills Akam, telling the boss that he is next. He declares that he works for the government and destroys corrupt people like him who profit from the country because despite the fact that times have changed, Shin SGU will fight evil wherever it is. He kills the boss and asks a decision KN, and will make a week passes and Kenshin carefree lives in the dojo. The day of reckoning has come, and his friends ask him what he is going to do. Sana doesn't trust Akuba, but Kenshin trusts and says that if Akuba had become corrupt, Su would have killed him long ago, because despite their differences, Su believes in the justice of Kenshi. Then Kenshin leaves alone to meet with Akuba, saying that he no longer wants to drag his friends into this. Kyo is worried, but his friends assure her that Kenshin will not leave her alone. Meanwhile, Akuba also heads to the dojo, thinking about how to convince Kenshi to help him defeat Shishi. However, the assassin sent by Shishi kills him, before saying that even Kenshin can't do anything against them. The coincidences add up like a Tetris puzzle. Lion and a bunch of disgruntled samurai who are planning to kill Akubo stop him carriage and they discover that he is already dead. They don't see who did it and decide to take credit for his murder. Kenshin is horrified to learn that Akubo was killed, then Shishi's henchman tells him that if he wants to live, he shouldn't confront his boss. Kenshin turns to him, but the killer has already disappeared. After that he goes to the general's office, with Shuein meets the minister who was the last to see Akubo alive. The minister tells him that Akubo is planning to rebuild Japan and turn it into a real democracy, and only such a great man as he could bring it to the end. Later Shio says to Kenshi, well, after Japan lost its greatest leader, there were only worthless scum left who are not capable of ruling the country, so he asks Kenshi to quickly make a decision. At night Kenshin returns to the dojo and tells Kao that Shishi killed Aku and he cannot leave it unpunished. He declares that he will leave to deal with him, and Kao is in despair. She asks, will he kill Shishio? But Kenshin is not sure about this yet, but he is sure that no matter how long he lives a peaceful life in his soul, he will remain a killer, and the longer he stays here, the more he will endanger his friends. Kenshin says that he was truly happy when Kyo accepted him despite the fact that she knew about his past. She was too shocked to talk, and then Kenshin hugged her and thanked her for everything. Saying goodbye to her,